I'm beginning to think that Ronald Acuña Jr. could be ready for the season sooner than we're expecting. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today on this special bonus episode on Saturday, January 11th. This is your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_Today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, BravesToday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. And in all of the excitement of the arbitration deadline and everything else going on, a lot of people missed that Alex Anthopoulos went on 680 The Fan to talk to Cellini and Domino on Thursday afternoon. We're not bringing you that interview in its entirety. That was not a officially scheduled media availability for the Braves, so we're not allowed to record that and post that to the channel like I like to do. You can go listen to the entire audio. I encourage you to go do that at 680thefan.com. They do have it available. I think it's actually in their podcast feed. But I wanted to bring you a couple clips from that show because there were some interesting takeaways, at least for me, from listening to AA. Touches on some things we've discussed on this show, whether it's with guests like Chris Towers yesterday or just on our own, about production from shortstop in left field, Sean Murphy having a rebound year. And some of the big takeaways for me was about the timing for Ronald Acuña Jr. I don't think it's going to be as severe as they've said. But I want to start off with AA's kind of explanation for why the offseason has been slow for the Braves. He talked a little bit at length about they've tried to make some deals and just couldn't quite get it all together. So, again, full audio from this is available at 680thefan.com, but here's a clip of AA talking to Cellini and Domino about the offseason so far and some of the timing of everything.
I mean, it's been active. I know, obviously people are asking, how come you guys haven't made trades and signings and all this kind of stuff, and there's still a lot of activity right now. Trades, there's still players out there. I think it's the same thing. We just don't want to force a deal, and it feels great in the winter. You have a halo effect. Everyone ends up getting excited. And then, if you don't believe in it, you get to next off season and you realize, oh man, probably shouldn't have done that, And I think, look, it's tough because it's a long off season, and you look at some of the other sports, you have basically a signing day and it all gets done in one shot. Ours drags, and it will not surprise me if it drags into spring training. I don't know that for a fact, but just the pace of things has just been slower than expected. So obviously there's been plenty of deals that have gotten done. But, we're also starting from a pretty good base as well. So that doesn't mean we don't have place. We can get better in all areas, bullpen, offense, and rotation as well. But again, if we start to force deals, especially when you talk about long-term deals, whether it's trading for a long-term contract or signing a long-term contract, you're getting married when you're doing those. And if you're not convinced, you probably shouldn't marry. You probably should go on a date. And that means maybe a short-term deal, because you get married 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it's going to be, and you don't believe in the deal, you're going to be trying to unwind that the following year, and that causes all kinds of complications going forward.
I'm going to kind of play that fun game of parsing some of the comments that we hear in these clips and things like that. But to me, what I'm gathering from Alex Anthopoulos, when he talks about this has it could drag out into spring training, and mentioning you don't want to get into a multi-year deal, marry somebody, and realize it's not going to work out and you have to unwind the whole thing. What that tells me is, I think, maybe two things. One, the commitments that the free agents are asking for are for maybe more years and or more money than Atlanta's comfortable with. And then to go along with that, the players that they're talking to, or that they were talking to, who are asking for those deals, have just enough uncertainty where Atlanta's not comfortable making a long-term commitment to them. They would be fine for a for a 1-2 year deal, something like that. But these players want a longer term deal, and it's a little bit of awkwardness for Atlanta. Now, later in the availability, he talks about they've tried to upgrade it, outfield, starting pitching, relief pitching. And so there's a couple guys you can think of when you say a guy who probably wants a longer term deal that you would have questions about. You know, the first name that comes to mind is Jurickson Profar, right? We've talked about him on the show, the outfielder that made some notable approach and mechanical changes and had the best year of his career last year, but it's 1 year. He's done that 1 year out of his entire career. He's in his 30s already. And so I could see the hesitance to going and committing long-term to a guy who was coming off of a short track record of this actually working and a much longer track record of it not working, right? So when Alex talks about this could drag into spring training, the pace of things has been slower than expected. To me, and you saw this last year with the Adam Duvall signing, right? As it gets closer and closer to spring training, guys start lowering their asks, whether it's dollars, whether it's years, whether it's the role. Maybe they don't, maybe they're fine potentially being a platoon bat because they just want to have a job. And so that's how I interpreted that deal. I would not be surprised if Atlanta added someone on a major league deal in spring training. Either a guy that has not been signed yet, like Adam Duvall was not signed, or a guy that is not going to make his major league roster on the team that he is on, and he gets traded for almost nothing to Atlanta, or he gets released earlier in cuts and Atlanta picks him up. That's kind of how I interpreted that. And I don't know if one of those players will be an outfielder or not, because I think the Braves have been a little overly cautious with Ronald Acuña Jr. in their public statements. And the way that Alex worded his answer to one of these questions about that is part of the reason I think that. I have the clip here. He's talking about Strider and Acuña's injury returns. And he alludes to they're trying to protect these guys a little bit. Let me play you the clip real quick.
With Acuña, I believe, when Acuña got hurt in 21, it was at the All-Star break, middle of July. And I believe he started a rehab assignment April the 9th, I think. And you look at now, he had the injury, I believe, May 27th. So it's about a 6-week gap there. So just if we treated him exactly the same as we did after the 2021 ACL, if you work backwards from April 9th starting a rehab, 6 weeks, you're now getting into end of February, right? And we're not going to do that. I think in hindsight, as much as he was ready to go and the doctors cleared him and so on, we've ultimately decided, we want to give him more time. And, he played fine, but he definitely wasn't to the level that he had shown us in the past, MVP level and so on. So I think automatically we will have that extra 6 weeks baked in no matter what. So he will not start with us opening day, but you'll see him out in spring training. He's running, hitting, shagging, all that kind of stuff. And we'll just take it day by day. But they're doing really, really well. I just think right now, just to avoid speculation, all that kind of stuff, we just kind of announced on the front end, hey, they won't be on the opening day roster. As we get closer to opening day, we'll have a much better sense of the timeline, but I don't think it'll be that far off, just based on where they're at today and how well they're doing.
So to recap that, if you didn't hear the whole thing, in essence, he's saying the timeline, if it's the same injury timeline as when he got hurt in 21, you're looking at he should be cleared by the doctors the end of February. You'd have a month to get Ronald ready for spring training for the regular season opener on March 27th. And what they're saying is they're giving that 6-week time frame because they're going to take it slow. So this may be a situation, and we've seen this before with Ronald, where the team was cautious and he was ready to go, or just player injuries in general. The team was cautious. The guy was ready quicker than they thought, and they brought him back. I'm thinking about Orlando Arcia in 23 with that broken wrist. He didn't even play in rehab starts. He went from he is still out for a couple more weeks to being activated within 5 days and coming back and playing without rehab stints. I'm not saying that Ronald will be back on March 28th or anything, right? But and Chris Towers in yesterday's show, Friday's show, made me think about this. The way that Atlanta is approaching the offseason and their acquisition of talent in the outfield, they're saying the right things about Ronald not being available for the first 6 weeks, but the way they're behaving is like they expect him to be back before that. And I think it's possible if he's reacting well to the treatment, the rehab, if he's moving well, if everything's going well for him in spring training, it's entirely possible that he is not out for 6 weeks. It's entirely possible he's out for 4 weeks or 2 weeks. He goes on a rehab stint, does a little bit of rehab, and then he's back maybe by mid-April versus the timeline they've give, which is mid-May. So that's kind of where I am now. And I think because of that, and because of some other comments AA made about the outfield and who has jobs and who doesn't, I'm not as concerned about Ronald missing a significant portion of the season as I was going into that interview. And I'll break down the rest of that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsey Crosby talking about Alex Anthopoulos addressing the media on 680 The Fan. Again, full audio of that interview is available on 680thefan.com. Go listen to Salini and Domino really jokingly and a very appropriate way kind of put AA to the screws and get as much information as they could out of him while still being respectful. Something that was interesting, and another reason why I kind of think that Atlanta is banking on Ronald coming back sooner than mid-May, is how Alex mentioned the outfield playing time, right? Talking about who has a job, who's going to be competing. And this mainly concerns Jared Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz. But let's play that clip for you real quick.
There's going to be competition right now in the outfield. The only locks right now are Acuña when he comes back and Harris. After that, we'll have a competition, but that'll depend on what personnel shows up in spring training. So we've certainly explored bat, reliever, and starter. We've explored all three to varying degrees. If there's something that we think makes our team better, we'll go ahead and do it.
I saw a picture of Marcell Ozuna. The camera can lie, the angle can lie. Is he thinner the way that it looked like he was in the picture I saw?
I'm not aware. I can't tell you. I mean, normally these guys, they come into spring training, so we'll see. But I mean, the way he's performed the last 2 years, I mean, he was in the Triple Crown race through I think mid-August, maybe late August, was unbelievable. So.
He can't play left field, though, right?
He can. I think the issue for us is the arm strength. He's fine tracking balls and so on, and the issue was just the arm strength. He knows that. He's aware of that. I think just guys going from first to third and so on. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's capable. You're going to have to give something, right? You're going to have to certainly give something up in terms of arm strength and guys advancing bases and so on. So our thought right now, he's been so successful as a full-time DH. We've gotten 2 exceptional years out of him. We don't want to fool with that right now.
I wanted to throw in that little bit there about Ozuna as well to kind of answer some of the questions people have had about, is it possible that Marcell Ozuna plays some left field for Atlanta as well? Is that why they've not gone out and got anybody? And he's established it's not the speed that's the issue. It's not the actual ability to track balls and things like that. It's the arm strength. And I think we all remember that play. It was a sac fly. I can't remember who actually hit it, like Gene Segura or somebody. And Ozuna's in left and Alec Boehm's on third base. And this ball's hit maybe 210 feet from home plate. And Ozuna's moving in, set up to throw, and Boehm is safe at home. Now, Alec Boehm didn't touch home plate. Like, that's just up front. Alec Boehm did not touch home plate. But the point is, any other outfielder on the roster, that's an automatic out. They're probably not even running on any other guy because that ball was not deep enough. But on Marcell Ozuna, they were comfortable in having Alec Boehm run, and they got the run out of it, even though it was ultimately a bad call because he didn't touch home plate. And so, also fun note in this interview, they also established that Austin Riley's not going to move from third base either. I think it was Domino asked that because Chipper was willing to do that when they brought somebody in, would they ask Riley to do that? And he's like, Riley's not moving, Ozuna's not moving. They're not changing positions. But Michael Harris is obviously your starting center fielder. That is a lock. That's 100% lock. Ronald Acuña Jr. is locked into a spot when he comes back. Other than that, it is in every sense a competition between everybody else for those jobs. And so because of that, it tells me like your options for your opening day your corner outfielders. You have Brian De La Cruz, you have Jared Kelenic, you have Eli White, you have Carlos D. Rodriguez. That's really about it. There's not a lot of guys that can contend for a job. Maybe you try Luke Williams out there a little bit. He has played outfield in his career. This is not a system that's flush with high-level outfielders. You did get Connor Capel on a minor league deal. We have no information about whether or not he'll be invited to spring training or not. But there's not a lot of options there. And I feel like if you're going into the season legitimately not expecting to have Ronald Acuña Jr. back for 6 to 8 weeks, you're probably bringing in another guy that you can at least pencil into one of those outfield spots. The fact that Atlanta hasn't really invested any sort of money, prospect capital, anything into anyone of note in the outfield makes me think they are comfortable piecing together one spot in the outfield, not two. And there's a big difference in asking the trio of Brian De La Cruz, Jared Kelenic, and Eli White to cover the corners for a month than asking them to cover it for 6 to 8 weeks, or to cover it for 3 weeks versus 6 to 8 weeks. So I legitimately believe, I'm starting to believe, Ronald Acuña Jr. is probably not going to miss 2 months of the regular season. We've heard that floated out there. I think Mark Bowman of MLB.com has been the main one kind of with that time frame, that 6 to 8 weeks for Ronald Acuña Jr. for a couple reasons, based on what they've done for talent acquisition, what they've done, what AA said. It feels like you're not actually going to be, it's not actually going to be that long, right? I do think another guy that we got heard a lot about was Ian Anderson. Okay, Ian Anderson came up in this interview as well, talking about what his role is going to be in 2025, as well as why Atlanta didn't call him up last year. Let me play that for you real quick.
Ian Anderson's out of options. And again, he was in Gwinnett all last year, came back from Tommy John middle of the year, and didn't have a great year, but it's his first year back. He now has a normal offseason. This guy was our 2-starter in the 2020 run to Game 7 of the NLCS. He was our 3-starter in our World Series run. He was a top 5 pick in the draft. He's coming in and essentially competing to be a 5th starter. He's obviously capable of much more than that, and he's been much more than that. We want to see that through.
When we talked to you about this, why didn't you bring him up last year?
He wasn't throwing well. And I think at the end of the day, every game counted. Every game counted. We went down to the wire, clearly. So, we weren't going to bring him up if we didn't think he was ready to go. Even you look at when Kirby Yates came back, we signed him to the 2-year deal. The first year was $1 million. We didn't know what we would get. But we brought him back right at the end, and he wasn't the same. And look, a lot of times it's kind of some of the calculus we use with Chris Sale. The first year he came back with the Red Sox. You rehab all winter. You're rehabbing, and then bam, you're right into games. Whereas, Sale had a fine year with the Red Sox, and Velo was down at the end of the year, and he had a 4-something ERA, but we really felt like a normal offseason for him would do the trick. And again, Ian's still got to come in and compete and make the team, and he might end up in the bullpen as a long guy, depending on if we add anybody and so on, but. We don't want to lose sight of the fact this guy was a pretty good piece for us, and we're not counting on him right now as a top 4. He's competing to be that 5 because we do think Strider will be back.
On the note of Strider being back, AA talked about this earlier in the pod. We've talked about this on the show at length, using clips of Strider talking on the Costa de Clue podcast. Strider's going to have a normal spring training, right? His absence is going to be minimal at most, and I get the impression it's just going to be probably a rehab start or two before they actually bring him back to the majors. So Ian Anderson is in the situation that you were planning on having Orlando Arcia and Jared Kelenic in last year. They're going to be at the bottom of the lineup. We're not asking them to carry us at all. We're just asking those guys to go handle their business, work on being consistent, let the rest of the team carry us, and you just spend the time getting better. And it feels like that's the similar situation here for Ian Anderson. I've talked before. You heard AA mention it. He's out of options. There is the possibility he goes to the bullpen, which would be the first time he's ever thrown in relief in his professional career, right? He's always been a starter. But it feels like, barring injury, and we talked about this with Chris Towers yesterday, a guy always gets hurt, right? A starter always gets hurt. But barring some sort of catastrophic injury, it feels like Ian Anderson's going to be your final starter. He's going to be the dude that just gets to take the ball every fifth or probably sixth day. They indicated they want to continue giving extra rest like they did. And whatever he can give you is gravy, right? We're just wanting him to come out of the season healthy. We're wanting him to take the ball, give us what he can give us, improve the best that he can, and be respectable back there. In just a second, talking about Arcia and Kelenic, AA mentioned offense from the shortstop in the left field position, as well as a potential rebound for Sean Murphy. We'll get to that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back. Final segment of Braves Today on this bonus Saturday episode, talking about Alex Anthopoulos' interview with Selene and Domino on 680 The Fan on Thursday afternoon. Again, full audio of that interview available 680thefan.com. He addressed Sean Murphy when asked. He addressed offense from shortstop and left field. Let's go with Murphy first, because AA's thoughts on this very much mirror the same thing that we put out. I want to say it was late November. We did that show about there's a simple blueprint for a Sean Murphy rebound in 2025. So here's the clip from AA talking about what Sean Murphy needs to do behind the plate next year.
And we know that Sean Murphy is the full-time catcher now in every way, shape, and form. How important, for the sake of the team, is it for him to bounce back?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no doubt he was incredible the first half of 23, starting catcher for the All-Star team at a 900 OPS, scuffled in the second half, gets hurt, I think, opening day or opening series in Philly with the oblique. He missed, I think, two months and never got on track. But this guy's been an exceptional player in his career. We do think, we won't know, and I don't want to create excuses for him, but we do think there's something to when you come back from oblique injuries and so on. But look, the proof will be in the pudding, but we're very bullish on him, very optimistic that he's going to be back to the player that he was. From a durability standpoint, he caught 116 games in Oakland, I think the year that we acquired him. So he's been very durable as well. So, we expect Sean to have a big year.
AA's comments here mirror what Chris Towers said on the show yesterday about oblique injuries. You're really never right when you come back from an oblique injury. It takes a long time because baseball is such a rotational game, right? So the organization, per AA's own words, believes that he can go out and catch a lot of games, that he's going to be productive. We saw how he did in Oakland when he played almost every day. We saw that first half of 2023, Travis d'Arnaud missed a month. Sean Murphy played almost every single game while d'Arnaud was out, put up a batting average over 300, was absolutely electric. So he's not going to play that much. I do think he'll probably play 4 to 5 out of every 6 games. He's not going to do the day game after a night game. He's not going to do a getaway day game like that. But outside of that, he'll be the starter most nights. If you have a 6-game series, 2-3 game sets at home, he'll probably catch 5 of those. I think that's probably the plan that they'll do. He'll catch either 4 or 5, and obviously you want this to work out. He also talked about left field and shortstop and trying to get some offense from here. Are they connected, right? Do you have to get a big bat in left field to feel comfortable with whatever you get out of shortstop and things like that? Interesting question from Celine Domino. Here's what AA said to the guys, again, on 680 The Fan on Thursday.
Can you live with a light-hitting shortstop if you go get a left field bat?
I don't know that I would link them that way. I think you can live with the light hitting anything if you have a really good lineup. And I think for Orlando Arcia's case, there were times, and this is not a criticism, he was hitting fifth. He was hitting fifth, I think, a bunch. He may have hit fourth, too, but there was a lot of times he was hitting fifth, and that's not to be critical of Smith. That's all he had. That's all I gave him, you know. And, you know, the game plan wasn't for him to hit fifth. It was to hit at the bottom of the lineup, 8-9. You know, you look at those great Astros teams, you know, they had Martin Maldonado, great veteran presence, you know, light bat. They carried him through World Series wins and division titles and CS appearances and so on. So if we have the other guys doing what they're supposed to do and staying healthy, and for the most part, we by design have built, you know, last year notwithstanding, a group of position players that have been durable year in and year out. Austin Riley, I mean, that's a freak thing, getting hit in the hand, but he's durable year in and year out. Matt Olson, durable year in and year out. So we expect those guys to post. And, you know, we were all world offensively in 2023. I don't think it was fair to expect that. I would have thought maybe some regression into the top 5, no worse than top 10. We ended up being in the middle of the pack, but that was with a lot of guys having missed a lot of time. And we're capable of so much more. So I'm still pretty confident in our offense being at the top end.
So this kind of mirrors what we've been saying really all offseason is Atlanta's main strategy this offseason is we're going to get a bunch of our guys back. And we're not going to be as good as 2023. That was probably the best case scenario for everybody. Nothing went wrong. But we're not going to be as bad as 2024. That was the worst case scenario for just about everybody. Everything went wrong. The reality is somewhere in the middle, and we're banking on being closer to the 2023 team than the 2024 team. And a lot of the moves Atlanta has made this offseason has been, and obviously we've talked about this, has been depth, right? Has been trying to get outfield options you can stash in Gwinnett if something happens. Carlos D. Rodriguez, Connor Capel. You'll have some minor leaguers up as well, or some minor leaguers that could potentially factor into that. It's been getting pitching options, right? You traded for Davis Daniel. You grabbed Connor Gillespie. You know, just getting as many options as you can so that if you have significant injury strike you again, like you did last year, you're better equipped to handle that. And then you have the financial flexibility, if you can't handle it, to go out and make a trade, acquire somebody, take on some bad money if you have to, so that you can get an upgrade in season. And I think that's probably the best thing that you could ask for. That's the best that you could ask for if I told you that Atlanta was not going to sign a major league free agent this offseason, then the best you could ask for would be, okay, then I want to get as much depth as we can at as many positions. Because ideally, it's like 2023, and most of these guys just don't even play, right? You needed the shortstop for a couple weeks. You needed the second baseman a little bit. But for the most part, all of your guys played. Ronald posted. Matt Olson posted. Austin Riley posted. Like, everybody was in the lineup. And you didn't need to use all that depth. Last year, you did. You obviously didn't have enough. I'd argue nobody in baseball would have had enough depth for what the Braves went through last year. You still made the postseason. And it's very clear to me that the goal now is get as much depth as we can. So if we have some injury issues, not as severe as last year, but if we have the normal to an above average amount of injury issues come up, we have guys we can plug in and keep moving without having to go out and make acquisitions every time something happens. If Austin Riley goes down for a month, you're still going to have to go get somebody, right? You're going to have to go make a trade. You're going to have to, grab somebody who was DFA. You're going to have to get somebody. But if you lose a guy for a week, you have more depth to replace someone, right? So, all in all, the organization sure sounds like they're mostly done with the offseason, other than bringing guys in close to or in spring training once their prices go down. Let me hear from you. What do you think about that? Does that make you feel better or worse about the 2025 season? I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. You can email us, contact@bravetoday.com. Leave them in the YouTube comments down below. We will, barring some sort of crazy trade over the weekend, we'll be back on Monday. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.